The Tale of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. One day, Ali Baba saw a gang of 40 thieves and followed them. They stopped before a rock, and the leader called out, "Open, sesame!" The rock opened and they went into the cave, and then the leader called, "Shut, sesame!" As before, the rock obeyed him. Later, the thieves came out of their hiding place and went away. Then Ali Baba pronounced the same magical words and went into the cave, where, to his amazement, he saw a vast quantity of treasure that the thieves had hidden there. Ali Baba filled up a sack with those wonderful jewels and went home feeling very happy and contented. He showed everything to his brother, but instead of being glad, his brother coveted that fortune and decided to go himself to the cave of the 40 thieves to fill up many sacks like the one his brother had brought back. Paying no heed to the warnings of Ali Baba, his brother set out for the cave, but was discovered by the thieves. When they saw him, they fell upon him and gave him a terrible beating. Then they interrogated him, and in his terror he accused his brother of being the one who had discovered the secret of the cave. The chief of the thieves locked up Ali Baba's brother in the cave and set off in search of Ali Baba to capture him. To do this, he disguised himself as a fruit seller and asked for shelter for himself and his donkeys. The donkeys of the bogus fruit seller were loaded up with large earthenware jars, inside which the thieves were hiding. Ali Baba invited them into his house, but his faithful slave Morgiana, discovering the thieves hidden in the jars, finished them off by pouring boiling oil all over them. Then Morgiana ran in search of her master and told him of the wicked intentions of the thieves who were hiding in the jars and who would have leaped upon him at an order from their leader. The leader of the gang, on finding himself discovered and without assistance, offered no resistance and was at the mercy of our friend. Ali Baba made the wicked thief return all he had stolen to its rightful owners and release his wretched brother safe and sound. The story of conceited Johnny. Johnny was a very good-looking but vain boy. One day he was invited to Lucy's birthday party. "Are you coming to my party, Johnny?" asked Lucy on the phone. Very smart as usual, in his best clothes and accompanied by his little dog, he went to Lucy's house to the party. He did not forget to take her a present and had a lovely bunch of flowers with a large pink bow. When he arrived at the door of Lucy's house, she opened it herself. "Happy birthday, Lucy. Take this. It's for you." "Oh," cried Lucy, pleasantly surprised. And the party got underway with music and was great fun because all the boys and girls there loved dancing. But poor old Pup didn't enjoy all that merrymaking very much. He had a terrible headache. Johnny lit a cigarette to show off in front of all the little girls who were watching him. "How conceited Johnny is," cried Lucy. "Yes, I don't think smoking's good for you," added her little friend. But Johnny, who was only a little boy after all, and never should have lit a cigarette, soon began to feel the ill effects of smoking. He was so dizzy he had to flop down on the floor. "Oh dear, whatever is happening to me?" Johnny was sick for a whole week. What would his admirers say if they could see him in such a state? What a fine chap Johnny is! His faithful friend the pup was also most concerned to see his master confined to bed. And that is the story of a little boy who didn't do his homework because he wanted to run before he could walk. So don't forget, never smoke. It could be fatal. A Heart of Gold. Paul's favorite game was playing tricks on all the animals, and this made him feel good. The angels in heaven were very upset when they saw the bad things Paul was doing. Two little cherubs read in the angelic news that there was on earth a doctor skilled at mending hearts and hastened to him. "Look, doctor, Paul is very naughty with all the animals, and we should like you to try and change his heart to make him good." Paul was very frightened when he went to the doctor, for when he saw that the boy had such a bad heart, he cried, "It will need a transplant operation right away." The doctor looked high and low to find a suitable heart for Paul, for he needed a good transplant to make that naughty boy good. "Let's see. Yes, that might be the one, but no, maybe this one then." All the little cherubs up in heaven helped the doctor by bringing him more and more hearts for him to choose the most suitable one for Paul. At last, after a great deal of searching, the doctor found what he was looking for. The doctor set to work. Paul was very frightened, but he came through the operation with great fortitude, for he knew that it was for his own good. It would make him into a good little boy, and the angels would be very pleased. The transplant of that bad heart by one from heaven was a complete success, and the results were soon apparent. The angels were very happy that they had contributed to such a good deed. From that day onwards, Paul had such a good heart that all the animals were his friends, and all the little girls wanted to be friends with him because he was so good-natured and cried, "He's so kind, he has a heart of gold." Going fishing for the day. One fine day in spring, Pippa was looking forward so much to going fishing in the river, for she felt like eating some nice, fresh fish. With her went her inseparable friend Snowy, a cheerful cat with a big appetite. When they had walked for a while, Pippa found a nice quiet spot by the river, and there she stayed with Snowy. When she had made all her preparations very carefully, Pippa cast her line into the water. "They are biting already!" cried she happily, hauling in her rod strongly. Snowy helped his mistress, for he knew that he would at least get the bones of the fish, and he was so hungry. After they had pulled and pulled, they finally succeeded in hauling a fine golden fish from the river. "Look what we've caught!" cried Pippa happily, and Snowy was already licking his lips at the prospect that awaited him. "That's enough for today, it's so big," said Pippa to Snowy. But just as they were about to leave, they heard a little voice coming from the river, saying tearfully, Please don't take my mummy away. Don't take my mummy away, please. Pippa looked towards the voice and said, I think we've caught the mummy of that little fish. Poor thing, how tiny he is. And our friend, who was really very kind-hearted, put the fish back in the river, for she did not want that poor little fish to pine for his mother. Snowy was not very pleased, for he knew that would leave him without his tasty snack. It was worth losing our catch to see that little fish and his mother happy together again, thought Pippa. When he saw them splashing about together in the water, Snowy, who had a heart too, had to admit that his little friend had done the right thing. The story of the wolf and the 7 little kids. Once upon a time, there was a goat who had 7 little kids. When she went out, she said to them, Beware of the wolf! Don't let him in, for he will eat you up! She had not been gone long when someone came knocking at the door and said, Open up, children. But the kids knew from his voice that it was the wicked wolf. We know who you are. You're the wolf. Our mother has a nice voice. Be off, you wicked wolf, they cried. The wolf was very angry and went to a farm where he took lots and lots of eggs to make his voice sweeter. And when he had succeeded, he went back to the goat's house. Open up, my children. It's your mother, said the wolf. But the kids could see one of his paws through the window and said to him, Our mother hasn't got black paws like you. You're the wolf. Be off with you. The wolf was angrier than ever and went to a mill where he wielded a club at the miller and forced him to put plenty of flour on his paws. When they were as white as snow, he went back to the goat's house. Open up, my children. I am your mother, he said. The kids were suspicious and said to the wolf, Show us a paw so that we shall know you are our mother. The wolf showed them his paws all covered with flour, and on seeing such a white paw, the kids believed it was their mother, and opened the door. The kids were terrified when they saw the wolf and tried to run away and hide, but the wolf caught up with them and ate them up one by one. Then he lay down in a nearby meadow and fell into a deep sleep. When she returned home, Mother Goat could not find her children anywhere, and she was very frightened. My goodness, the wolf has been here and eaten up all my little ones. Suddenly she heard a little voice coming from under a tub. Mummy, Mummy, here I am, cried a little kid who had escaped from the wolf. She explained that he had eaten up all her little sisters. The mother goat went out in search of the wolf and found him fast asleep. With a pair of scissors, she cut open his stomach, and out came all the little kids, safe and sound. The mother goat filled up the stomach of the wolf with stones and sewed it up again. And when he woke up, he was very thirsty and went to the river for a drink. But the weight of the stones made him overbalance and topple head first into the water. From then on, Mother Goat and her little kids lived in peace without ever having to fear the wolf any more. The story of the Little Mermaid of Copenhagen. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful mermaid who lived happily at the bottom of the sea. One day she found a piece of newspaper. Her attention was drawn to some great big letters which said, "We are looking for a Miss World."
"Oh, my goodness! How marvelous it must be to be the most beautiful woman in the world!"
exclaimed the little mermaid to the snail. The mermaid began to dream. She could just see herself dressed in fabulous gowns and lying on swansdown cushions, admired by the whole world, and wearing a beautiful crown like a queen on a richly decorated throne. The little mermaid decided to enter the contest.
"All my friends say I'm beautiful. Isn't that so?"
she asked. The snail replied, "Well, of course you are, but don't forget that you are a mermaid." "I advise you not to go to town," continued the snail. But she took no notice and asked her friend the turtle to take her to the town.
"Hurry up, Turtle, or I shall be too late for the contest."
But what do you think happened when she got to the contest? They thought she was a fish, and the cooks made her up into a tomato salad. When the cooks were not looking, she escaped from the kitchen and went in search of her friend the turtle.
"Oh, dear little turtle, take me down to the bottom of the sea again. Hurry up, a gang of cooks are after me," she cried.
"There you are. Now you see what happened because you did not heed my advice," said the snail. And the poor little mermaid understood that it is not possible to be both beautiful and at the bottom of the sea and on land too. The story of the wicked little witch. Once upon a time, there was a very naughty little girl. Her greatest wish was to become a witch, but not a good little witch. A bad little witch. She began to read more and more books to find out how to become a witch.
When I have become a witch, I shall be able to make all kinds of spells. And what fun I shall have," thought the little girl.
When she had read lots of books, she found one which said quite clearly that in order to become a know-all of a witch, it was necessary to wear a witch's costume.
"I can soon arrange that,"
said the little one to herself. She went up to the attic, and from an old trunk she took some ancient clothes, which she turned into a lovely witch's costume. She also hired a little owl to assist her with her mischievous plans.
"That's it. And now to work."
A sly cat was watching her intently, but he hid under the table to keep out of the way of the flies.
"What fun I shall have playing tricks on the other children."
The novice witch began to prepare a potion, and so that it would come out properly enchanted, she poured into the cauldron all kinds of unpleasant mixtures. The little animals of the wood were very frightened when they saw such diabolical-looking smoke coming out of the chimney. There's something evil cooking in that house," they said to one another. But there she was, casually stirring and stirring away at that mysterious potion. And what did she see? "Oh, what's this? What's happening?" What was happening, dear children, was that all the pots and pans that were touched by the smoke given off by the cauldron were coming to life. "Oh, what have I done? That was not what I intended." But the cups, coffee pots, spoons and brooms were all beginning to dance and jump around the little girl, as if they were dancing to the sound of some mysterious music. They could not stop whirling round and looking menacingly at the little witch. It was such a horrendous sight that even the owl and the mice wanted to hide. As the little girl did nothing to put right what was wrong, the crockery started to bump into her. "Oh!" cried the little girl, for it hurt. But turning deaf ears, the pots merely poked her all the more. The bad thing was that the poor owl too got his share and exclaimed very angrily, "So you wanted to amuse yourself casting spells on others, did you? Now just look what you've done. Hoo, hoo!" The little girl pronounced the magical words that will put an end to magic spells for evermore. She quickly got out of the witch's outfit, and very sorry for having had such wicked thoughts, she went out into the garden to play in the sun and the fresh air. That served as a lesson to her and made her understand that one should not do to others what one would not like to have done to oneself. The story of Cinderella. Cinderella was a lovely maiden whose stepmother and stepsisters were jealous of her beauty. They made her work all day long, washing and scrubbing, because they thought that was the way to make her uglier. But she was helped in her burdensome toil by her friends, the little animals of the wood. One day they received an invitation from the king to attend the palace ball. Her stepmother said to Cinderella, "You can stay at home and do the washing up and the cleaning." The wicked stepmother did not want the lovely Cinderella to go to the festivities in case the prince noticed her. Poor Cinderella was very sad when she saw her stepmother and stepsisters leave in all their finery to enjoy themselves at the ball. A tear fell from her beautiful eye. Immediately her fairy godmother appeared and said to her, "Don't cry, Cinderella. You shall go to the palace ball." "How can I, when I haven't a dress?" asked the young maiden. "Never fear," replied the fairy. "You shall wear the prettiest dress, and you shall be the most beautiful of all." The fairy touched her with her magic wand, whereupon the rag Cinderella was wearing turned into a beautiful gown. "You must come back before midnight," warned the fairy, "because at that hour the spell will be broken." When she arrived at the palace and got down from her majestic coach, pulled by 6 white horses, everyone at the festivities was dumbfounded. "Who can this beautiful lady be?" wondered her stepsisters, who had not recognized her. The prince, when he saw her, was so captivated by her beauty that he danced the whole evening with her.
I must go back before midnight, thought Cinderella. Otherwise the coach will turn back into a pumpkin, and the 6 white horses into 6 mice, as they were before the fairy touched them with her magic wand.
But Cinderella felt so happy dancing with the prince that she forgot everything else. When she heard the clock strike 12, she ran from the palace, dropping a slipper as she went. The prince, taken aback by the flight of the young lady, ran after her and picked up the slipper. Some days later, a page set out to travel throughout the kingdom with orders to find the owner of the glass slipper. Cinderella's stepsisters also tried to put on the little slipper, but it was made to fit only Cinderella. And the stepsisters were amazed when they saw Cinderella take out the other slipper to match. And so it happened that the prince married Cinderella, and the 2 of them lived happily ever after. The Story of Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there was a boy they called Jack of the Beanstalk. They called him that because one day he went to market and exchanged his cow for a handful of fine beans. When he arrived home, he planted them in his garden in the hope that they would bring him good fruit. However, the next day when he woke up, great was his amazement when he saw that the beans had grown so quickly that they reached up to the sky. Jack climbed up the stalk of his plant. He went up and up and up until he was higher than the clouds. His house looked very tiny down there in the distance. When he reached the top of his gigantic plant, he spied a castle in which there lived an enormous giant. Jack, who was very brave, entered the castle and saw the giant, who was sitting listening to music and watching a hen laying golden eggs. Jack marveled and thought that if he had such a hen, there would be no more poverty in his house.
"Please, sir, will you lend me the hen that lays the golden eggs?" said he to the ogre.
By way of reply, the giant seized him and was about to put him in his lunchtime sandwich. But Jack, who was very agile, jumped like a flea, seized the hen, and began to run back to the beanstalk. The giant set off after him, but the beanstalk swayed back and forth under his great weight. Jack reached the ground first, and taking an axe, cut down the beanstalk at a single stroke. The giant came down with such a bump that he no longer had the will to pursue him. With the golden eggs laid by the hen, Jack was able to bring happiness to the poor people in the town. The Tale of Tom Thumb. One day, Tom Thumb, who was the smallest of 7 brothers, heard his parents sadly saying to one another, "We shall have to abandon the children in the forest because we have no money and no work." The next day they sent them to seek firewood in the thickest part of the forest, in the hope that they would get lost. Tom Thumb, who knew that, dropped crumbs of bread to guide them home again. However, during the night the crumbs disappeared. The birds had eaten them. The children began to cry, but Tom Thumb climbed up a tree and spied a castle in the distance. When they arrived at the castle, they knocked several times at the door, but nobody came. The children were very tired and lay down to sleep. Tom Thumb, however, was awoken by sound of footsteps. Tom Thumb saw an enormous giant, who said to himself as he counted them, "How tasty these 7 children will be fried in a sauce." Hearing this, Tom Thumb awoke his brothers and said to them, "We must get away from here! Run! It's the giant! He's coming to eat us up!" The boys fled in terror. They ran and ran and ran, so far that the giant became very tired. He lay down to rest and soon fell asleep. Tom Thumb took advantage of this to take off the 7-league boots which the giant was wearing. Without them, he was only an ordinary little man. Tom Thumb took the 7-league boots to the king, and he rewarded him with a purse full of gold for having freed the country from such a fearsome ogre. With the gold, they went home to their parents, who had repented and welcomed them with open arms. Thanks to Tom Thumb, they all lived happily ever after. The story of Wild Blossom. Wild Blossom was a little orphan girl who had to look after and feed her little brothers. The only way she could make a living was to go into the country and pick pretty posies of flowers, which she then sold. She and her little brothers lived on the money she earned. But one day, when she had picked more flowers and was ready to go to market and sell them, she felt poorly.
"Oh, dear me, how poorly I feel."
Little Wild Blossom felt very cold and had to wrap herself in an old shawl.
I have got the shivers. I must have a fever. I cannot go and sell my flowers today,"
said she to her little brothers.
"I have such a headache."
How sad the little ones were to see their sister poorly in bed.
"My poor little flowers," said Wild Blossom between naps. "If I don't sell them today, tomorrow they will be withered away."
But lo, while our little girl was sleeping, the gardeners from the sky stealthily appeared. Equipped with heavenly dew and petal transplant, they worked on those flowers that the little girl had so lovingly picked. They achieved a miracle, and the flowers did not fade, so that she would be able to sell them when she was better. When she had been ill for a few days, Wild Blossom woke up one morning and felt that the fever had gone. Her head had stopped aching, and she felt better. Her joy was doubled when she saw that the flowers she had picked some days before were still fresh and flourishing.
"It's a miracle! I shall be able to sell them and earn some money."
The little girl looked with eyes full of wonder at the baskets full of flowers.
"They really are marvelous flowers,"
she said to herself.
"In fact, they are heavenly."
For what had happened was that the heavenly gardeners had given each flower a radiance and each leaf an everlasting glow. That day, Wild Blossom's flower stall was resplendent as never before.
"Give me a posy of those golden daisies," said one customer. "Make me a bunch of these marvellous roses," said another.
Soon she had sold them all, and could have sold more besides. The little girl was very happy and contented. And so it was that Wild Blossom got home with her basket full of food for her dear little brothers, who were waiting joyfully for her.
"Look, brothers, look what I've got! I sold all the flowers and have bought lots of things."
And that was how the heavenly gardeners rewarded this little girl for being so good and for working so hard. The Donkey Skin. Rosalind was a very cheerful and nice little girl, always ready to help others, which is why all the woodland animals loved her so much. The little girl lived in an old castle with her stepmother and her horrible daughter. Rosalind's stepmother was jealous of her beauty, which is why she made her do all the heaviest work, in the hope that she would grow as ugly as her own ugly daughter. One day, the stepmother and her daughter went to town to buy warm clothes because winter was coming. Her stepmother, instead of buying an overcoat for Rosalind, bought her a donkey skin, knowing full well that once she had put it on, she would be unable to take it off again.
"Here, this is all you're worth,"
she said to her. The little girl had no alternative but to put it on, and that was how her stepmother succeeded in making her uglier than her own daughter. Her stepsister was very happy and contented when she saw how everyone laughed at Rosalind and called her Donkey Skin.
Look who's here! Donkey Skin, Donkey Skin!"
they cried. Some time later, when she found that she could not take off the donkey skin, and was tired of being the butt of everyone's laughter, she decided to flee through the forest. Rosalind was crying when a prince with a magic lute happened to pass that way. At the sound of his melody, little by little, the donkey skin started to fall away, until she was free of it. Whereupon the prince was so astonished by the beauty of Rosalind that he decided to carry her off to his palace and marry her, and they lived there happily ever after. The story of the hen that laid the golden eggs. Joanna was a very good girl, but she was very poor. Such was her poverty that sometimes she only had a crust of bread, and would hand that over if anyone asked for it. As she was so good, one day a magician gave her a beautiful white hen. The next day, Joanna went to see if the hen had laid an egg for her breakfast. And oh, what a surprise! The hen had laid an egg, but it was made of solid gold. She was very pleased with it and took it straight to show her mother, and together they went to the jeweller's to sell it. With the money they received for that precious egg, they were able to buy many things they lacked: food, clothes, shoes, and other articles. From that day forward, Joanna was a rich and disagreeable little girl, who on one occasion even threw out of her house a little boy who asked for a crust of bread. But the day after she had treated the boy so badly, when Joanna went to collect the golden egg laid by the hen, what a disappointment! All she found were lovely, fat, fried eggs.
"What's this? Where are the golden eggs?" asked Joanna angrily. "Cluck, cluck, cluck," said the hen. "I'll give you cluck, 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 you bad hen. Aren't you ashamed at laying such rubbish?" shouted Joanna, and she began to beat the hen with her broom. The poor little bird was very frightened by the rage of her mistress.
But the next day the magician appeared to her again and said, "It is not the fault of your hen that it is not laying golden eggs. It is your bad behavior in not being charitable to the poor, and I have punished you. It will not lay any more golden eggs until you change your ways." Joanna was very sorry and ashamed, and she understood that it was a punishment she well deserved. She ran out in search of the poor boy she had turned away a few days before and invited him in to eat. From then on, the hen continued to lay the golden eggs, which he distributed to all the poor children of the town. The Tale of Puss in Boots. There was once an old miller who died and left the little he had to his 3 sons. To the youngest of the brothers all he left was his cat.
What on earth can I do with a cat?"
said he to himself. The cat heard what he said and replied,
"Meow. Master, give me a pair of boots, and you will see how clever I am. Meow, meow."
As soon as his master gave him the boots, the cat ran through the streets shouting,
"My master is going to marry the king's daughter. Meow, meow."
The first thing he did was to go hunting for a plump rabbit. He used a juicy carrot for bait, and zap! One fell straight into the trap. When he had caught the rabbit, he bowed before the king and said to him,
"Meow. Great king, my lord the Marquis has sent me with this gift for you. Meow."
"And what, pray, is your master's name?" asked the king.
"Meow, the Marquis of Carabas,"
replied the cat solemnly. The next day the cat, proceeding with his plan, said to his master,
"Meow, meow. Have a bathe in this river while I go in search of the king. Meow."
The young man did not know what was going on, but he obeyed and dived into the water. Puss in Boots knew that the king would be passing by that place, and went out to meet him. When he caught sight of his carriage, he began to shout,
"The Marquis of Carabas has been robbed. They stole my master's clothes while he was bathing."
The king stopped the procession and went down to the river. When he saw the unfortunate plight of the Marquis, he began to give orders. "Bring forth fine clothes for my good friend the Marquis of Carabas." The cat's master then realized how fortunate he had been to inherit such a cunning animal, who lived happily ever after with his princess. And so it was that Puss in Boots made his master a rich man who lived happily ever after with his princess. In the corner of the barn. They came out of their shells, which they broke with their little beaks. But there was one who went on. They came out of their shells, which they broke with their little beaks. But there was one who, when he presented himself to his mummy duck, gave her such a shock that she cried, "Oh, what an ugly little duckling you are!" All his little brothers laughed at him and teased him because he was so ugly. He was so different from the others that they would not even let him have anything to eat. When he came near them, they cried, "Be off with you! You are too ugly to stay with us!" Nobody loved him. "I really am very ugly," said the duckling, looking at himself in the waters of the lake, and he wept bitterly. As nobody understood him, in search of a solitary spot where no one would. Sad and unhappy he felt. "Everybody hates me and avoids my company." As nobody understood him, to leave home, he went through the wood in search of a solitary spot where no one would laugh at him. In the wood, he came to an empty house where he spent the whole winter. Oh, he would himself the duck spot when he came out for a walk. He saw him and he saw him. At first, spent to a action so the came he for and to be just ever he but among their and that he was good. What would work something said right felt it was and had another little who in hood rat that felt red as who give that leave out in and hey. At a bend in the path, she was waylaid by the wolf, who asked her, "Where are you going to, Little Red Riding Hood?"
"I am taking this basket to my grandmother, who is ill."
The wolf suggested they play a game and said to her, "Let's see who gets there first. You can take the shortcut, and I'll stay on the path." Little Red Riding Hood agreed, and the wolf, whose intentions were of the worst, had sent the little girl by the longest route so that he would get there first and surprise her. When the wolf arrived at Grandmother's house, he knocked at the door.
"Who is it?"
asked the old lady. "It is Little Red Riding Hood."
Come in, dear. The door is open."
The wolf locked up Grandma in a cupboard, put on her clothes, and got into her bed. A moment later, Little Red Riding Hood arrived.
Oh, Grandma! Oh, Grandma, what big eyes you have!"
"All the better to see you with, my dear," said the wolf.
"Oh, Grandma, what big hands you have!"
"All the better to hug you with," replied the wolf.
"Oh, what big teeth you have, Grandma!"
"All the better to eat you with. Grrr!" And with that, the wolf pounced on the poor little girl and was about to eat her up. Little Red Riding Hood screamed and screamed, "Help! Help!" and when they heard her cries, all the little rabbits in the wood came running. The rabbits, because there were so many of them, and they were so very brave, succeeded in overcoming the wolf and releasing poor Little Red Riding Hood from his clutches. And that is how the wolf completely lost his appetite for little girls. Her grandma was released safe and sound, and Little Red Riding Hood learned to do as her mother told her, because if she had done that in the first place, she never would have found herself in the clutches of the big bad wolf.